Hey, everybody, and welcome to the next or the current Thursday's learning session with Philip Wiley. I have the primary host here, Omar Santos, and Philip Wiley. Philip will be joining us video in a little while. In the meantime, I'm going to tell you about some stuff that we have going on over the next couple months. So the Red Team Village is hosting Hacking is Not a Crime. It's called HackerCon. Chloe and Omar have been responsible for putting most of this together. They've done a tremendous amount of work, have some really amazing speakers. It starts at 8 a.m. Pacific time. For those of you on the West Coast, this is a perfect time for you to hop on and enjoy the event. And then I think it runs till what, 6 p.m. Is that
Yeah,
right, Omar?
comment
6.
that I think that the guys from the West Coast don't wake up that early, but we're making up that early, right?
Yeah,
It goes all the way to
6:30. Yeah.
30. Even though we actually had 17:30 and all military time, the last one is 6:30 p.m. So there's no confusion.
For those people that don't understand military time. Yeah, I'm always over there counting. What is that? What's 1300? Anyway, yeah, check out 1300. It's going to be Casey, awesome speaker, has a really cool talk to provide. So HackerCon starts at 8 a.m. Pacific time on Saturday. So make sure that you're available and attend it. It's going to be throughout the entire day. I think there's talks like almost back to back. So you're bound to find something that interests you. It's going to be streaming on all of our stream platforms, which is Twitch, YouTube for both Red Team Village and Grayhat, and we'll be on Facebook for both of those platforms as well. I think Twitter took off some of their streaming capability, so we're not going to be. And plus, I think we had like pretty crappy performance on that anyway, so we're not going to be streaming to Twitter, but we'll be announcing speakers and stuff like that on Twitter as the day progresses. We hope that you'll be able to join us. And then after that event, the next event, you want to bring up the timeline, Omar?
Absolutely. I can go back in here.
Alrighty. So our timeline shows the next event is going to be RSA Conference, May 17th. So while the RSA Conference runs the entire 4 days there, starting May 17th, the Red Team Village primary presentations will be done on May 17th. We'll also be running 2 different CTFs. The first CTF is a actual CTF walkthrough. It's a full-blown CTF, but the person that's Barrett, who's the main person running through it, is actually going to walk everybody through step by step on how to approach a CTF, what to be looking for, how you can score on the low-hanging fruit ones, and then build up some confidence, and then go towards the more harder ones, and then how to approach those hard ones. He's going to actually take that entire time to walk you through that. And then Thursday, the 20th, there'll be an open CTF. That'll be a medium to hard level CTF, and there'll be some prizes given away at that time. On May 17th, we're going to have 4 different birds of a feather talks. We're going to have 4 different lightning talks, and then we're going to have 4 different demos that'll be going on. So if you're wanting to check out all the things at RSA Conference, check out the Sandbox and the Red Team Village. We will be there. And then in May, at the end of May, the 29th, Omar and I both, as well as the rest of the Red Team Village, will be supporting our May aptly named Mayhem conference for all of the mayhem that we cause. And that conference is going to run all day from early in the morning till late in the evening. We're going to have our famous learning stations where you can learn a skill. Basically 30 minutes, you spend the time at that station, and you'll walk away with a new skill. That is the goal of those learning stations. Some of them are 30 minutes and they run up to 2 hours. So you'll learn a new skill within 30 minutes, but if you want to finish the entire course, it could take 2 hours. There's another course on there of course, that I think you could probably spend a week doing, and that's the one that Omar created. So take a look at those things. And then also during Mayhem, we're going to have speakers. We're going to have some hands-on training. All of our all of our call for papers is open on that right now. The next things we have coming up after Mayhem for the Red Team Village is going to be DEF CON. And then after DEF CON is the Texas Cyber Summit. The Red Team Village will be at the Texas Cyber Summit in San Antonio, Texas live. It will be a live in-person event as well as a virtual event. And the Red Team Village will be supporting both live and virtual. And then in November, the first part of November, they'll be in Orlando, Florida at Grayhat. So watch for all those events. Lots of stuff going on this year. We're going to try to do this Thursday, Learning Thursday, every Thursday for as long as we can keep it up. As long as we have energy and and focus, we'll do what we can. I'm going to pass it on to Omar now so he can continue with what we have going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that, Joseph. A couple of things. I guess if we had a trivia question to ask the audience, mine will be, why the Mayhem event, right? So, of course, we're not going to do any trivia right now. So I'll briefly, I guess, talk about the funny story about what Mayhem is, right? So last year, of course, after COVID hit, we were trying to figure out how to do a virtual event for DEF CON, right? And we were the first ones that actually kind of tried to figure out the streaming, what would be the platforms, should we communicate in Discord, should we communicate in other platforms? And Joseph actually came up with the idea, since it's in May, and we were actually planning this thing in May, that it's going to be Mayhem, right? So it's going to be a Mayhem, it's going to be a cluster, and I'm not going to mention the other word, right? And we were actually fairly successful. We were lucky, I guess. We were pretty successful. That was our first virtual event that we had. And from now on, we're actually going to do it until the rest of the eternity. Every May will be a Mayhem, just in commemoration of, last year Mayhem event, right? And talking about that, as Joseph mentioned, there's a call for paper. It is open in our website, which is the one that I'm sharing in the screen right now. We have, of course, the schedule for HackerCon, as Joseph mentioned, but also in the top, you see this Learning Thursdays. This is the place where we're going to put information about this Thursday's learning events, the different streams, right? So today we actually have Philip, and thank you so much, Philip. As a matter of fact, Philip has been supporting the Red Team Village for years. Also has been supporting the Hacking is Not a Crime, effort for quite some time as well. He's one of the board members in there, and I can just not thank him enough, right? So we're very lucky to have him. The next 2 weeks, we're going to have a really cool presentations as well. One is around memory forensics with kernel level ASLR bypass, right? How to actually potentially bypass ASLR and do memory forensics. It can be for doing for both, right? For exploit development or for, analyzing malware, but mostly that talk is going to be potentially for exploit development. And then in April 8th, we have a Harsh Brotha, which is also another supporter for the Red Team Village, going over a talk called Exploiting Misconfigured Jira Instances for Money. That one is going to be also pretty interesting. So stay tuned. Those are the next two events. If you have a topic that you want to share with us and present in any of these, Thursday events, feel free to actually, go to our website, and there's a quote unquote call for papers, submission form that you can absolutely participate. As a matter of fact, I'm probably going to spoil it, but Felipe, which is actually looking at us, I'm looking at him, or at least I'm looking at his text in YouTube. He will also be presenting both at Mayhem and at the Thursday event. So we have a lot to share with you, a lot of events. But without any further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it back to Philip, and he's going to talk about different ways that you can do manual vulnerability detection. And he's going to go over, a lot of different tactics and techniques that you can actually learn from the very master, Philip Wiley. So I'll pass it to you.
Okay. Thanks, Omar. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Hey, awesome. Philip.
Can you see my video?
We see you.
You see me?
That's
Okay.
your video.
That's
and right now you should be able
share
to.
screen. Okay, let me see here. Okay. How about now?
Perfect.
Good. So yeah, thanks for the introduction and thanks for having me tonight. So we're lucky that that Omar and Joseph always puts on these virtual events. This virtual stuff has really kept my sanity over time during the pandemic, because I love going to conferences and different in-person meetups. And if it wasn't for that, I don't know what I would do. So we're just going to kind of go over some, let's see what's going on here. Okay, so tonight we're going to go over some manual vulnerability detection, and we're going to throw in some Nessus in there too, to kind of show you what you can find with Nessus and what you can find, manually. Because as a pen tester, you need to be able to do more than just, run vulnerability scans. You need to be able to manually detect these vulnerabilities. And if you're going to plan to go through certifications like the OSCP, then it's going to rely heavily on that, because you can't use vulnerability scanners during that. So one of the first things I'm just going to demo here is Nmap. So our target, we're using Metasploitable tonight, and that's one I really highly recommend that you download to practice your hacking on, because it's got like a bunch of different vulnerabilities. There's a lot of different vulnerable VMs you can download from VulnHub. But the cool thing about the Metasploitable series, and this is Metasploitable 3 that we're targeting tonight, which is a Windows box, it has so many vulnerabilities, it's equivalent to like several vulnerable machines. So it's not going to take as much disk space up to have to install a bunch of different VMs. So this is a good one to start with. Rapid7, the creators of Metasploit, created the Metasploitable series for a way for people to learn how to use Metasploit and doing pen testing techniques in general. So this makes a really good target to test against. And for those of you that don't know me, I've been a pen tester for 9 years, been in security for about 17 years, and over 23 years in IT and security combined. I spent a large portion of my time in application security. That's where I got interested in pen testing, because I was running web application vulnerability scanners and found out about pen testing. And when I got laid off from my job of 14 years back in 2012, I went to work consulting as a penetration tester. And so this first scan we're running here is just a generic Nmap scan. And if you notice on the screen here, pull this over to the center here, that we have the ports, the state, and the service running on that. So this is not going to tell us a lot. The only thing we're really seeing any information on is the NetBIOS and the Microsoft Directory Services ports that you see open. In MySQL, that is, that pretty much explains to us that it's a MySQL database. So we really don't have much version information on here. So the next scan we're going to run, and I kind of like to do this in steps, so that way you see what the different things do. So we're going to do -pn, so it doesn't ping, it doesn't probe that host, because sometimes you'll run certain types of scans. If it doesn't complete, then you'll get a message back saying, to use -pn. So that's one that I use to begin with, to start out with. So this time we're going to do a service scan, and we'll see how much information we're getting here. So what the purpose of this talk is to show you how to manually detect some of these things. We're going to step through using the different Nmap commands, as well as some different scripts that can give you similar results that you would get to doing a vulnerability scan with Nessus. And we're also going to show you some scripts that you can look up exploits for the vulnerabilities. We're not really going to get a lot into exploitation, but show you how to find those exploits if the systems are vulnerable. So my most recent job where I'm at now is I'm at INE. I'm an offensive cybersecurity instructor there. I kind of decided to go full time with the the teaching thing, I started teaching at what was Richland College. It's now Dallas College back in January 2008. And prior to that, I did some mentoring and sharing information and helping people get started in pen testing. So teaching just seemed like the only natural next step. And I liked it pretty well. And so now at INE, if you're not familiar with INE, they acquired eLearn Security back in 2019. That's really how they got into the cybersecurity space. So with the content they have now, we're updating it. The eLearn security stuff was pretty slide heavy. So we're going through and reducing the number of slides and adding more video content, updating the content, and adding more courses.
Hey, Philip, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
A quick thing. I'm just getting a couple of folks also mentioning this. I think that you're sharing your secondary monitor. We only see the Metasploitable OVA files. Is that
okay? Let me see. Let's see here. Yeah, the screen. Let me see. You stop sharing. Share again.
Okay.
Yeah, it looked like it was your second screen.
Okay. Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
Much better.
Okay.
Now we see Callie.
Yeah. No.
So
Right. Can you start over?
Can I start over? I can go back and explain the screen again since everyone can't see. I expect you to be psychic or something, but up here is the first scan we ran, and we did just a plain Nmap scan with no options, and you can see the port state. So we're seeing all these ports listed as open, and we're not seeing a lot of detail. So we're just seeing SSH. So we don't know what type of SSH we're running. You know, some of the things like the NetBIOS, the Windows related stuff, we can see that's Windows, but we really don't know server version. We see it's running MySQL. So the second scan we ran is a service scan. So you see this scan up here, we hardly got any information. And then we go down here and we see we've got a lot more information. Now we know that this is OpenSSH, SSH daemon running on the server. We see that it's Microsoft Windows Server 8, version R2 in the patch. And so we see that it's also running 5.5.20 of MySQL. So we're getting a lot more information here. So if you're going to find vulnerabilities and go a step further and exploit them, you've got to know what version that you're running of those services and the different softwares. So we can see that we've seen that now. We see that it's running the Sunglass open source edition HTTP server. It's running Apache HTTPD. And normally you don't see this, but one of the things I will point out, if you're doing a pen test, you might think you're only going to see one web server, but there's chances you can see more than one. And this is one of the reasons I like to do port scans, even when I'm doing a web app pen test, because sometimes the developers started out, maybe they were hosting the application on Microsoft IIS using like the .NET framework using ASP. And maybe during the development phase, they decided they were going to go with JSP and they used Apache Tomcat. So a lot of times services that are running on there that weren't intended to still be on there, a lot of times aren't being updated. So things are on there that sysadmins know about, they're updating, but these other things they may have forgotten about. So sometimes these are way in. And kind of in the same subject as web app pen testing, it's good to know a little bit of that, even if you're an infrastructure pen tester, because a lot of cases we see this device here, it's running several different types of web services. And sometimes like Apache Web Server could be used to host a JSP page that is managing some sort of IT function. So it's some admin screen, maybe it's some kind of print server manager or something like that. Even some security appliances or applications may be running as a JSP page. So sometimes, the network could be really locked down. Well, maybe they got, the passwords really complex. It's hard to brute force to get in. But sometimes the only way to get in is through, these web vulnerabilities. This time we ran the service scan and we got a lot more information on it. So this time we're going to go through and we're going to run the default scripts. And so Nmap has these scripts that are NSE scripts, Nmap scripting engine scripts, and they write these scripts for a lot of different applications and protocols. So if you find something SMB related, there's some SMB, SNMP scripts out there. And so this, we're running the default scripts, and this will run different scripts against those ports and services to give you a little more information. So when we get down to our final scan, it's going to be pretty much, it'd be kind of similar to running a vulnerability scanner. And this is stuff that you can do during the OSCP. You can't run vulnerability scanners, but you can do this. And so when we run this next step here in just a little bit, you'll get even more information. Once you can add some other switches, if I'd added like -T and 4, then it would have ran a little faster. You really don't want to go faster than T4, because once you start doing that, you'll start missing things. You'll scan so fast you could possibly miss ports that are open or services. So we want it to be, we want an accurate scan, so we don't want to scan too fast. And while this is running, probably go ahead and get Nessus fired up. Kind of show you some of the different things you can do with Nessus as far as discovering vulnerabilities. And that's one of the things, as a pen tester, you'll use vulnerability scanners. So it's good to learn how to use those vulnerability scanners. And a good way to kind of break into pen testing is working like on a vulnerability management team, performing scans. When I worked at US Bank, we had a group that all they did was reoccurring monthly scanning, and then we had another team that's a remediation team. So as the pen tests were run, they would go through and test the vulnerabilities to see if they were actually remediated. So they may go through and do steps to try to replicate, how the vulnerability was detected, and see if they're still vulnerable or not. And that was kind of a pathway into the pen testing team. So we're letting this run here, and so there's other vulnerability scanners out there, but one of the things I like about Nessus is they do offer their free version, Nessus Essentials. So if you go back to our browser, I can show you the page. And so Nessus Essentials is really pretty close to Nessus Professional. The only difference you get, one of the major differences, you only get 5 IP addresses. 16 IP addresses you can scan. Okay. Up on me. Probably should have given my VM a little more memory. Okay, so our scan's still running here. So looking at this because I was expecting to take a little longer and get into starting up Nessus. And see, we get even a little more information here than what we did on our other scan, just adding those default scripts. So we're able to see like that it's running in a group and not an Active Directory domain. So we see our work group here. So it's not running an Active Directory. So we know it's a standalone host. See that it's running SMB version 2. So we can also see the name of the server, Vagrant-2008 R2. And so the user we don't see in there. Sometimes you might get the information of the user that's logged into that system. And then we see a little more information on these other applications that are running these different services. And so we see here, these are risky methods here. So this is running, the server is running Apache Tomcat, and here is some different methods, or you also hear them referred to as HTTP verbs that are dangerous. So this is allowing puts and gets, puts and deletes. So a put allows you to upload files, and delete allows you to delete files in a system which you don't want. If the security is set just right, you can upload a file here, and you could, like in the case of bit like Apache web server, one of the popular attacks here is to take like build a malicious war file using Metasploit and uploading it to that system so you can get a shell, because the war file, once it's uploaded, it's kind of like a package for a JSP page or application. And once that's started, then it creates a JSP page and you can get a shell to that. I've had several pen tests where either Apache Tomcat was running or Red Hat JBoss Java server running on the systems, and when I was able to get a shell to those systems. So these are things to look for when you're getting ready to try to exploit the system, and you're just kind of doing your reconnaissance, your scanning and stuff on there. So we see puts and deletes. It's got Apache Tomcat enabled. There's a good chance we're able to upload a malicious war file to create our shell. And so we see different information on here for MySQL. And a lot of times you'll see the my PHP admin, which administers MySQL, that lets you administer the database. And sometimes there's no authentication there, and then you can get access to the database. And so we see the version of OpenSSH. And so what we're going to do this time, we're going to add a script. And we're going to specify this time a certain script. And so we use the vuln script, and this will actually give you like open source vulnerability database information, different CVEs and stuff like that. So this will give you more information on those vulnerabilities. So this is going to give you output that'd be similar to what you'd see like in Nessus. This time we're going to add the T4 function to have it run a little faster. So you can see each one of the steps, we go from little information to more and more information, and this is going to give us even a little bit more because it's going to give us vulnerability information on that. And that's one of the tools. It's probably one of the more valuable tools that you'll use as a pen tester is, running Nmap. And that's like one of my go-to tools. So when you're running a pen test, you'll do like vulnerability scans or different scans using Nmap. As I mentioned, vulnerability scans with Nessus. What you're also going to need to do is validate those findings to make sure they're not false positives, because a lot of cases, some of these vulnerability scanners may find false positives. So you want to make sure that they're not false positives. So you can use manual tools and techniques, even other scanners. And some consultants I know will run Nessus, and they'll use something like OpenVOS, which is a free scanner to check, because sometimes there's things that Nessus may find that Nexpose by Rapid7 might not find, and vice versa. I've been on pen tests before where the client was doing regularly reoccurring scans, and Nexpose didn't detect what I found with Nessus. And then there's some other free tools that you can find things with that that the vulnerability scanners might miss. Okay. Trying to start Nessus here. And sometimes the weird thing, the nice thing is when you install Nessus the first time, it will kind of tell you what to do to start. And sometimes it doesn't always work exactly. I was teaching a boot camp last week, and we were all in the same version of Kali Linux, and some people would try to execute the same commands and it didn't work. So sometimes you have to do things a little differently. Let's see here. And these tools like Nmap and even Nessus, you can run it on Windows machines as well as like Mac OS. Usually don't run my pen testing OS bare pieces like this when you're running, giving you fits like this. You kind of wish you'd ran it bare metal, but so we see our scan over here still running. And so some good places to use the skills you learn from pen testing are places like Hack the Box and Try Hack Me. Try Hack Me I like because it's a little more educational than Hack the Box. Hack the Box is starting to add more educational stuff, but it's not really as friendly towards newcomers as Try Hack Me. But as mentioned, you can download the different vulnerable VMs to test against. And as far as trying to get started in pen testing, a good way to get experience is to use like bug bounties as a way to get experience. And it was interesting, last summer I was interviewing for a job with a boutique pen test firm, and one of the things they said is that it was easier for them to find pen testers to do web app pen testing because of the bug bounties. And one of the really cool things about Nmap is this is a project that's been going on for a long time, probably one of the longest running free pen testing tools out there. And then like each summer, they'll bring people on, do projects during the summer to work on improving the Peak app they came out with. Maybe a year or two old now, but the Peak app they're actually using like in Windows now for packet captures.
Hey Phil, for some reason your audio is cutting up a little bit. There were a couple of questions actually that came in. One of them was whenever you were talking about the actual, OSCP, that you mentioned that some of the scanners are not, you're not going to be able to use them. I tried to, of course, I took my OSCP a long time ago, but so I tried to answer some of that. But if you can comment on what you mean, because most people will be able to actually use Nmap. I think that probably
kind of I don't know if it's me or
yeah, for some reason.
Yeah, as far as like vulnerability scanners, they don't allow,
we cannot hear you well, Philip.
Like for the exam, you can't use like Nessus or OpenVOS. And then even like with Metasploit, you only get like one shot. And there's like certain systems that you can run it against. It's been since 2000. When I passed my exam, and it's changed. And one of the things I like about the content is last year when they updated the content, new content, OSCP guide.
All right, I think that we actually lost Philip. So we're going to go in a quick break until we get Philip back. I think that he had some problems with his connection, and we'll resume from there. Sorry about that. We'll get him online pretty soon.
Hey, everybody. Sorry for our technical difficulties, but we are back and live with Philip Wiley.
Welcome back, everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulties. When you have too much stuff running your system, even on a Mac, you can still have problems.
So while Philip gets this going, if you don't want to install Nessus and you have to get one of their licenses, and you can only scan, I think, 16 hosts or something like that. There's a replacement project for Nessus. I was one of the original contributors to Nessus. If you go and check all the Russian and Chinese backdoors, I wrote quite a few of those scripts to detect those. But anyway, the replacement project is called OpenVAS, and that is natively installed on Kali Linux, so you can mess around with that. I would say it's not as refined as Nessus is. Nessus was developed over a really long period of time.
As a matter of fact, there was a question related to OpenVAS, and I replied, I've used OpenVAS before, but Greenborn, which is the company behind it, they haven't done any updates to it. Have you seen any updates or any movement lately?
I have not. Have you, Philip?
No, and it's not as user friendly, but it's interesting that it's a fork from Nessus.
Yeah, it is.
Back from the early days. But now I haven't seen anything new about it.
No, I haven't either. I don't know that there's a really good replacement for it, but if you want to use something that's open source that has unlimited hosts, OpenVAS would be the way to go. You're just going to have to deal with some of the facts that it's pretty outdated.
So if Greenborn is listening, that would be amazing if there's probably an update for it. At least I haven't seen anything since 2019. All right, back to you, Philip.
Okay. Okay, so we had good grief. Yeah, my instance of Nessus is just not playing well. Yeah, something's.
Yeah, you might want to try stopping the daemon and restarting it.
Yeah.
And Nmap by itself can do a lot of really cool stuff as well. There's a ton of switches in Nmap that can also help you figure out what type of OS is running, what ports are open, and all that stuff as well.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, there's a switch for OS detection, and then there's -uppercase A that I think does all it does, so you don't have to get as granular. On these demos, I like to go through and show what using the different switches do.
Right, because sometimes you may not have a vulnerability assessment tool like Nessus or OpenVAS, and you can just do some rudimentary work. And it's actually beyond rudimentary work with Nmap. Nmap really is really robust.
Yeah, it's amazing what all it does.
And one of the things is that if even out of the box, if you don't want to use Nmap out of the box, there you can, if you're okay with Lua, you can create your own Nmap scripting engine script, right? And then tweak things that can be beneficial, at least for free, right? So.
But it's good to know how to do this stuff manually and not have to just rely on, because there's things that you might not find. There are some things that get missed using vulnerability scanners.
Yeah, and as a side note, whenever I was running, whenever I was building a new Nessus script in Nazzle, that's the language it's written in, I would always use Nmap to find the vulnerability, and and then build my script off of that. So yeah, Nmap is definitely the Swiss Army knife of scanning.
Okay, so this is running. We may not get around to Nessus, but that's pretty easy to figure out. Anyway, I'm just kind of go back here because there's another tool I like to use, Nikto, for finding web application vulnerabilities. So we had several different web services running here. So 8080, well, that was a proxy, but 8180. So this can't take longer. Go ahead and get the information here. Find the Tomcat vulnerability on there because that one is kind of interesting. And so you follow here, at some point it will show you when the NSE scripts are running. It hasn't got to that point yet, but it'll show you, if you watch the status there, you can see when those are running in your scans. But like that Nikto script, I've found like default credentials before on pen tests and things that Nessus or Burp Suite didn't find related to web application or web server vulnerabilities. You see a lot of people that just kind of laugh at Nikto, but you can find some stuff with it. Yeah, our neighbors, every Thursday they have their people come out and do their lawn. So it's it's like clockwork every Thursday night. During my boot camps for INE last week, our lawn people came that day, and normally they seem like they're in and out in no time, but that day it seemed like they were here forever. So I was having to talk over these mowers and blowers and all that stuff going on in the background. So now you see here we started the NSE scripts. And this is like one of my tools that when I'm validating vulnerabilities, this is the first thing I'll do. I'll try to find some kind of NSE script that I can use to validate that vulnerability before I even look for other tools. Okay. It's running on 8022. I don't know if I told you this, Joseph, or not, but the content that I was using for my ethical hacking class is from the Pentest Plus book that Omar wrote.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah, as the use certified content. I remember back last fall was the first time I used it, and I was kind of going through some of the content and say, "Hey, Omar Santos, I know him."
Yeah.
He's written a few things here and there.
That guy's everywhere. But what really surprises me is it seems like the really sharp people don't do this stuff for a living. They do other stuff, and then just for play, they do this stuff. So the less sharp people like myself, we're out here trying to learn this, and for Omar, it's just kind of something he does casually.
All those books are either for firewood to put them inside of a fireplace or to stop a door. They're all overrated.
All overrated? Is it?
Overrated.
Oh,
But they're
I thought you said overrated. Yeah.
I think they're underrated. They're all really good books.
Anything you do is good, so I can't imagine it being bad. When you said all over, I thought you said Reddit, but I was thinking because of the way people pirate books, you don't realize how bad piracy is until you write a book.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, it showed up like how many times? And I got what, 50 cents?
Our book was out 2 weeks and it was already someone I had out there for download.
No way.
Yeah. Wiley Publishing said that was was fast to get out there for download.
Yeah, no kidding. I paid for it. I still need to get you to sign it for me. But I bought it from Amazon China. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. And they misspelled your name on the cover. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I like Nick too. And it does, you're right, it does find a lot of stuff that other tools don't find.
Yeah, it's just, it's like really with this stuff, you want to use a combination of tools. I mean, even though you're using Nessus, you use Nmap, you use Nick2. I mean, here it's finding like some databases, which is in this vulnerable VM, it says finance. So if you're on a pen test, the information, the data you find are really the important stuff. And so this kind of shows you that because this is a purposely vulnerable VM. They got a spreadsheet on there. And some of the dangerous HTTP methods I was mentioning, like the puts and deletes, you can see that's allowed. And this is on Tomcat service. So you could upload a file. In a lot of cases, you see the web dev service running, which you can use a tool called Cadaver to upload malicious files to systems with. And so we see some stuff there, looks like related to cross-site scripting. So we're pulling some information here that we didn't get with Nmap.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I guess to highlight is that it's not about the tools, it's about the methodology, right? Because tools are gonna fail you.
Yeah.
Many different times, right? And as a matter of fact, in some cases, whenever I teach either in O'Reilly or Pearson or in any other places, people will say, okay, I'm running Nikto and I cannot find the same thing that you will find. And then you were, running the script 2 seconds ago.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, these tools, first they're open source, right? So it's a community effort, right? So if you find a bug, please contribute to them. That's the number one thing. But the second one is you cannot rely on a single tool. And this is actually the perfect example. It's all about the methodology, right? So whenever it fails, and a lot of people think that hacking is it's just like the movies, right? It's a lot of trial and error, a lot of tears.
Yep.
And the tools actually not giving you, not only the false positive, but giving you, information about, things that you spend a lot of time in a rabbit hole, right? Trying to find things that are not relevant, especially whenever it comes to reconnaissance, right? Another thing that I like to do is, while Necto is running or Mmap, etc., is using things like Ferox Buster or FOV, then send that to Burp if I'm doing some type of web application testing. And in that case, I actually got two. Of course, in the real pen test, you're gonna get caught if you're really loud, right? With these tools, you're gonna get caught in 2 seconds, right? So you have to time it. You probably have to create your own scripts, to time the queries, etc. Right? So
yeah, and it's likely a lot of the stuff that you're scanning for has been scanned by a public scanner previously, and you can go to Shodan or one of those other places and figure out what is open, and then just target your scripts for those things. So you really should have a targeted approach when you're doing a pen test.
Yeah, and back to that fact, the statement about methodology, that's going to help you repeat a consistent process. And that's how teams and companies repeat those consistent processes, because if you don't have a methodology in place, you might miss a step. And so this is important no matter what level you are as a pen tester, but when we really get started out, you want to build those habits. So that was a great point there about the methodology. So we can see the scan. So we ran the scan. I'm just going to up arrow to show you the scan that we ran here. It's kind of hard to see, but let's scroll back up. So we used the vulnerability switch this time, or our script. And so we can see down here at the bottom, because this is Windows 2000 Server 2008, and we see it's vulnerable to MS 17010. So you can see that's vulnerable. Then we can see here running the script command, we actually saw like the CVE score. So you can look these CVEs up online. So when you're writing your report, if you weren't using Nessus, then you can look up these CVEs to get information to write up the finding. And so here's some TechNet articles on Microsoft about it as well. And then here's like a MITRE link. And so you can look up these vulnerabilities and look for exploits. So like, for instance, we see that that's vulnerable to that MS10 or MS1710. So we go over here to like search exploit. And this is like a local repository of vulnerabilities.
As a matter of fact, we can probably do a quick trivia for the people that are here, right? So that CVE, the 2017-0143, it was related to an SMB, remote code execution vulnerability. So what ransomware leveraged that vulnerability, and what is the name of the exploit, for people? I think that's going to be a tremendous delay whenever I say the question. But while you're doing that, let's see if people actually know about that.
Okay. And actually, if you went back and looked at some of the scans earlier, I think it even mentioned what you're talking about too.
Yeah.
And there's even
actually, like right now it is in the screen.
Yeah.
It's the Eternal Blue remote code execution vulnerable.
Yeah. But the ransomware effects was WannaCry, wasn't it?
WannaCry was the first one, and then NotPetya, I think that they leveraged it as well. Mm-hmm. And they were leveraging this vulnerability as well as a Windows management instrumentation. So like living off the LAN type of activity and PSXEC. And that's how they were able to actually, completely compromise the machines, and the distribution was through this.
It's for those of you that are not familiar with that, those are the NSA tools that got leaked out there that this came from. And so you can see here the different vulnerability, the different exploits. And the .rbs, these are Metasploit modules. But then there's also some in Python. So not everything in Searchsploit is Metasploit modules. Sometimes these are like Python scripts. It could be code that requires compiling. It could be written in C. And so the beauty of this is the same information that you'd get from the exploit database website. You can search on it, but this lets you search from the command line. And the beauty of this is if you're doing a pen test, there's a lot of times you may be working somewhere doing a pen test that they got exploit DB blocked, so you can't download those vulnerabilities. So if you keep your Kali Linux instance up to date, then you keep the latest vulnerabilities stored on your VM or your hard drive, so you have access to those and you can run those. But this, I think with like Parrot OS, you have to install this. It doesn't come installed by default because this is an offensive security project, but you can install on Parrot and other Linux distributions, but Kali Linux has it installed by default. You just have to make sure you keep it up to date to be able to run those. So see, we're able to find, you know, exploits based on that, and you can search on the different vulnerabilities that you see, like the different Apache versions and stuff, and search on that and find different vulnerabilities. And some of the TLS related stuff, that's probably the thing I hated the most about pen testing is validating the SSL and TLS related issues, going through and validating all those. Let's see, we can see that there's like some cross-site scripting or vulnerabilities possibly. I didn't find any cross-site scripting vulnerabilities, and then couldn't find any cross-server request forgery vulnerabilities. So different things you can do too is go through here and look at some of these different server pages and see what it's serving up there. So this is the application that is running on that vulnerable VM. And this stuff here, these vulners, this is the people or the site that has this vuln script out there. So it has links to the different vulnerabilities out there based on that. And some of these are the exploit packets, another exploit framework out there. I believe it's commercial. I don't think there's a free version of it. That's one of the beauties of Metasploit framework is a free exploit framework. All the others cost. They're not free. So you can see all the references. So when we added that vulnerability script, it found all these vulnerabilities for us. I mean, this is actually a lot. Some of this stuff is information you might not find in Nessus because it's using this vulner site with different things, and so there may be some things you find here that you didn't find in the output of your Nessus output, because it'll tell you if it's exploitable, the difficulty of exploitation, and links to what, you know, they'll usually show you what it's exploitable with, so you can look up the Metasploit module that you can exploit with. So you can see this gives you a lot of different things that are vulnerable here that you can try. And so yes, is one of the ones I would recommend downloading this Metasploitable 3 and also Metasploitable 2. Metasploitable runs on Ubuntu, and you need to know how to test against Linux and Windows. So you can see as we added more information, you're even able to, there's some Cisco Works related stuff in there too. And then port 8080, what do we get running on port 8080? Maybe the proxy. This is like a HTTP proxy running on there. So any of these things you can just look up and see their vulnerabilities. So a lot of this stuff, since it's Metasploitable, is going to be possibly exploitable. So that's all I got. So if anyone want to open up the questions.
Yeah, I'm monitoring both Twitch and YouTube, and also in the Discord server for the Red Team Village. And by the way, if you actually just join us right now, this one, of course, is an ad hoc event, and we continue the conversation in Discord. The link to the Discord server is in the bottom of the screen, whether you're in YouTube or whether you're in Twitch. However, if you have any questions right now for Phil, as he mentioned, feel free to ask it away. I'm monitoring all three areas, right? So YouTube, Twitch, and Discord, and I'm more than glad to relay it to Phil. And I'm looking to all of my monitors that I have here.
Yeah, you got a lot of sources of questions to monitor there.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, we actually are streaming this to Grayhat and the Texas Cyber, I believe, too. Is that true, Joseph? So I think that's going everywhere.
Yeah, we are, and we're streaming to Facebook as well.
Oh, yeah, I'm not gonna monitor Facebook for sure. That's for you old guys. I'm just kidding.
For the old guys, what on
probably older than you guys both to put together.
Man, I've done some conferences before where there was questions at the end that I could have sworn someone was trolling me. The questions they asked, they had to be trolling. I mean, just the questions. I forget the examples, but I sat there and I'd answer it. And I kept hearing these questions that were really off the wall, and I thought, man, this person has to be trolling me.
Yeah, luckily we don't get a whole lot of trolls on the Red Team stuff. I think most people, keep things in line. So we've been pretty lucky on Red Team Village.
Yeah, it's like the first time I've had anything like that. And it might have been one of the virtual conferences in India or somewhere, some virtual conference overseas somewhere.
So there was one question coming in from Zero Exploit. In this case, it's in YouTube, and the question is are there any ways to spot a false positive, off of a scan before you actually attempt an exploit?
Yeah, you have to validate those. So you want to use something like if you did a Nessa scan, then you're going to want to try to validate using other methods. There's some manual detection techniques even outside of like Nmap, so you want to validate those. And so when you're doing your pen test report, that's one of the things that can be bad about vulnerability scanners, especially when you get into the web application vulnerability scanners. When I was starting out, we used to run during pen test, we'd run either AppScan or Web Inspect, depending on the company I worked for. And those web application vulnerability scanners were notorious for finding lots of false positives. So you have to manually rule out. You want to validate, because then you validate that it's an actual true finding, and then you see if there's an exploit for it. But yeah, you use something like Nmap, and that's usually what I look for first, see if there's any kind of way to validate with Nmap. If there's an Nmap NSE script, then I'll use something like that. Otherwise, like when I'm doing checking for some of the encryption related to SSL or TLS related items, I use like SSLIs or SSL scan to validate. So there's a couple tools that I use a lot that I go back to for certain items. And then even with the encryption related stuff, there's a lot of stuff with Nmap.
Yeah, one of the things that I always recommend is for people to think outside of the scan, right? Also, of course, the scanner is going to give you a lot of information. You also have to be careful if you're doing a real pen test, and of course, getting blocked, getting even if it's a bug bounty, right? You're gonna get blocked by something like Cloudflare or any other entity like that will definitely detect your tactics, right? So one of the things that I always recommend is at least start using the application as a user, right? Know what the application is actually doing. So for example, if the scan actually just tell you that has these ports open, but that it's actually a web application and probably is using a Mongo database behind the scenes that is probably using some type of JavaScript framework. specifically, that's actually part of the reconnaissance aspect outside of a script as well. So a lot of the things that, as Phil was actually mentioning, you're going to be developing, one, with experience, and second one, as you actually go through the whole process, focusing more into the methodology, right? Focusing all into to what is next, right? So if I'm a user, how can I abuse, the application itself? Another thing that I always recommend is that in order for you to scale, you have to break the application, especially if it's a web application, in manageable chunks. And whenever I say that, is that, if you explore that the application has an API, then focus on that. Try to actually, evaluate that, not just send every single tool under the sun to the API. That's where you're gonna get caught. And then try to intercept the traffic. It's really easy with a web browser, right, as a user, but to machine communication, you can use the same type of methodology, getting a proxy set up and see what are the behaviors of the API. And then from there to scale, then you move to the reporting area, then you move to the admin portal, then you move to the user registration, and so on. That's typically the only way to scale out there. Now, the other question that came in, this one is in Twitch. Is there a repository for any mmap scripts, like a catalog of them? And I guess I probably can start by sharing. I have a GitHub repository that I'll paste in, I guess, in both sites. Paste it in Twitch right now. And where is it? YouTube. And that GitHub repository is basically an mmap, cheat sheet, if you will. But if you actually go outside of that repository, I have about 9,000 different references to different tools, different methodologies, and so on. It's not like a catalog only of mmap, but it's a catalog of different things to do, OSINT, to do active reconnaissance that we are doing here, enumeration, and so on. So again, it's all free. And if you know of any other, feel free to contribute. It's at the end of the day, it's GitHub. And any other things that you will think, Philip, related to somewhat of a catalog of.
Yeah, if you just go to Nmap's website, you can look. They got like a list of the different NSE scripts on there.
Yeah, and I think that what the person was mentioning was, is there a repository of the walkthroughs, the different techniques, right?
Yeah, there's some good. Someone who has some really good walkthroughs is IPSEC. IPSEC does some Twitch streams and puts it up on YouTube. So he's got some really good walkthroughs.
Yeah, one of the things that we're thinking about doing in this Thursday, I guess, learning, we're probably going to pick up several intentional vulnerable applications, probably from VulnHub, probably from other sources, and actually just do walkthroughs as actually kind of figuring out live, not so much of a predetermined, and probably bring people in. So if you guys want to participate, absolutely, you know how to get in touch with us. You know that in the Red Team Village website, we have a section for these Thursday streams, and feel free to also share. And looking at the two streams, I think those are the questions. Thank you again, Philip. I really appreciate your time today, and thank you everybody for joining as well.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right, so we'll see you in the next one. Thank you again.